Hello, everyone. My name is Myung Hee Kim, and I'm the author of the webcomic Simon Sue's, which is currently hosted on the amazing Inkblazers site. And this is an episode of Ask the Artist. In college, my roommate and I started our university's very first anime, manga, comics, anything nerd club. And we would get together, draw comics, write stories. People would bring their original work or fan fictions. And then we would go to comic conventions, artist alleys, and try to peddle whatever monstrosity we had invented. And when that didn't work, we would just kind of force it on the kids at campus. So after that, I did some freelance comic work in my spare time, and I was also involved in a lot of fail comic projects with different publishers, which, all in all, it was a very, skin toughening experience, but I totally loved it. I guess it would be after my roommate and I tried to distribute our very first comic on campus, and somebody suggested that we move it online. I'm pretty sure it was because they just wanted us to stop hanging flyers everywhere. But in any case, we had never considered it before because this was something that we were just doing for fun, and who would ever want to read our stuff? But we tried some sites that would let us host our comic for free, and it turned out terrible. Seriously, it was a trash can full of poo, and I hope no one has the misfortune of finding it. The good news was that it totally changed my ideas about making comics. I mean, with webcomics, you can draw whatever you like, and you don't have to answer to an editor or a publisher. You work at your own pace, you have your own updating schedule, and the best part is you get to interact with your readers instantaneously. So they can leave comments, feedback. You can, choose to ignore it or you can embrace it and totally have it inspire you to work harder. And then you can share more of your ideas, more of your backstory, your universe. You can add extra content like anything from animations to music, interactive games. All that multimedia stuff can go along with your comic. So if you're like me and you really like something, you obsess over it. And I want to get my grubby little fingers over everything, that is that thing. And with an online webcomic, you can bring along all that extra stuff with your comic. Simon Says in a nutshell is kind of like if Sherlock Holmes was cast in a movie created by the writers from Law and Order and all the cameo appearances were cast members from the show Supernatural. Yeah. Actually, it started out as a story that I created for a company called Tokyo Pop's pilot program. And when they asked me to pitch something, I remembered reading this play in high school called Daniel Webster and the Devil, which I absolutely loved. But because it was a short story, I couldn't get enough about the characters or their backgrounds. And I wanted this to really be the general idea behind my pitch, which was fairly different from what the comic is today. So, for example, I always imagined that Simon was more or less Daniel. Seriously, his name was Daniel at the time. However, it was going to be this period detective mystery ghost story that didn't take place in contemporary times, but in actually 18th century upstate New York, because I love the Legend of Sleepy Hollow and I absolutely love the costumes. Sorry, Simon. The other main character, Isaac, was not Isaac, but actually a little girl named Annabelle, and she was a psychic who worked as Daniel's clerk and would eventually become his love interest. Thank God I had an editor who I was working with, which, by the way, I think is an experience that you should have at least once or, try to replicate it somehow because it really taught me to not get too attached to ideas early on in the brainstorming and then, how to cut that unwanted fat from the plot. So, after a lot of back and forth, she helped me whip the story into shape, and that's how Simon Says was born. Oh boy. So the most challenging part of Simon Says would definitely be figuring out how the hell Simon's going to solve the case. What kind of occult legal loophole can I build into the plot that Simon can exploit in order to save his client? but it can't just happen out of the blue. Like he suddenly has the power to have all powers. It's like that Yu-Gi-Oh episode where he pulls out this magical card from the deck and it solves all the problems, but you've never seen that card before. It has to be something where he comes to the answer as the story progresses and as he's collecting the evidence. And that way the audience can kind of figure out the mystery with him, but you have to make sure that it's not too forced or tailored and that it still leaves you in suspense. But, writing that way really hurts my brain. And sometimes I just want to pick up the plot and take it and throw it out the window and just have Isaac kick demon butt every single time. And Simon can just go on vacation and relax and problem solved. But, if I can get it just right, it actually is a pretty big payoff because I feel like the reader is totally rooting for Simon to pull through, but they're not quite sure how, and yet they're given all of the tools to guess and figure it out. And when somebody actually picks the actual solution that I have in mind, I feel as if I presented the material in just the right way. Welcome to Occult Lessons 101, How to Summon Your Very Own Demon. Demons, or in the Simon Says universe, fiends, are very tricky creatures. When things work out, they can be your best friend, they can grant your every wish, do your hair, but when they don't, they kind of want to bite your head off. So to make sure your first demon doesn't become some kind of bloodthirsty, murderous monster that's going to rip your face apart, there are a few rules you can follow to make sure the interaction between you and your demon go as smooth as possible. So rule number one, try to bind them to a real-world creature to make them as believable as possible. For example, a marine animal like a fish, or maybe a squid or a shark, or you could try an insect or a bug. So I hate bugs, but man, they make some great demons. Rule number two, try to bait them with something they want. If I were a bloodthirsty demon, what would be my favorite pastime? Well, it would be eating humans, of course. So how would a demon play with its food? If it's the kind that likes to eat you from the inside out, then wouldn't it be pretty creepy to make it resemble something that most people would never want inside them? Like maybe a slimy, wiggling worm monster, or how about a snake-like creature of some kind? Rule number three, fiends obey rank. So you have to give them a title, and then they gotta go get a job, which could influence what kind of clothes they wear, if they have a weapon, what kind of props they're carrying. And lastly, you gotta make a deal with it. So take your biggest fear, your strongest emotional trigger, your heaviest psychological damage, and put it into your inner demon and have it come through in its design. So there you go. Instant fiend. I would say the most enjoyable part of this comic is the torture. I like torturing my characters. I think it's payback for forcing me to come up with these ridiculous solutions to whatever mystery they're working on. But you know what? It builds character. And actually, there's two types of character-defining moments that I tend to include in my comic. And one is sort of that life-threatening situation that's very plot-heavy, and the character has to make these raw, emotionally charged, instinctive decisions. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have these quieter character moments that happen in the lull between the storm, and the characters are acting on a very conscious level where they're perceptive of their own thoughts and they're reacting to these little minute details that the other characters are doing. And I think on this level, readers tend to react to your characters more as flesh and blood because they're more sympathetic to these tiny little nuances in their personality. Oh, so what I'd like to tackle next after I finish Simon Sue's would definitely be an adaptation of my favorite childhood series called The Prydain Chronicles. I think most people would recognize The Black Cauldron, which is the second book in the series, but the books are beautifully written. They have these wonderful characters, and if you love Welsh mythology, Arthurian legends, or you're partial to The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings, then you would definitely love these books. I think it would have to be in color, and I would want to do it in a style that's completely different than what I'm doing now. But I'd like to make it a little tribute to my favorite childhood author, Lloyd Alexander. I guess my parting advice would just be to carry on, young grasshoppers, and keep on trucking. I guarantee if you consistently and critically practice your craft, you're going to see tons of improvement in just a short amount of time. So if I look at pages that I've drawn just a few months ago, it's always amazing to see how much improvement there was just by drawing every day. I promise you, with that pencil mileage, you're going to start churning out some pretty awesome work, and I can't wait to see it. So, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Ask the Artist, and I hope I get to speak to you again sometime. So, bye.